So are you going to be posting links?
I can, yeah. People don't know me; they know you.
Well, I don't know how to post them, so I could try to figure it out. I was planning to
Yeah. How do we center on make me
That's
this?
good. Cool.
Okay.
You're probably live. People watching this say.
We've been
I hope
live
not.
for 26 seconds.
So now's the time to stop using profanity. Or just get it out of my system.
8 waiting, it still says. Oh, 10 watching. Good afternoon. Can you all hear us? I don't think we're going to be able to hear you, but you guys can all chat and just...
My bad.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Glad you can hear us, Chris. Thank you. So good afternoon. My name's Jeff Parrott. This is Robert Gehrke. We are going to be live for, I think, the next about 30 minutes or so to answer your questions on the Proposition 4 repeal, which is probably going to take us back in time to about 8 years, to about 2017, to talk about how we got here first. So I've got some questions that you guys have been putting in the comments section of our story. Please put comments here in the chat. Gehrke and I have the chats in front of us too, so we'll be able to see you. Again, thanks for joining us this afternoon. And Gehrke, the first question that came up, we kind of talked about it yesterday, excuse me, in the story, was just how do we get here? You're like, how do we get to 2016 and 15 Republicans gathering a bunch of signatures?
Yeah, first the earth cooled, then dinosaurs came.
Yep.
No, we got to go back to 2018. There was a push by the group Better Boundaries to put a ballot initiative on the 2018 ballot that would have created an independent redistricting commission. It set some neutral criteria for redistricting, and then it banned partisan gerrymandering, banned manipulating the districts to benefit one party over the other. And so they went out, got the signatures. Remember, 2018 was the year we also had a medical marijuana ballot initiative and the Medicaid expansion initiative, and all three of those passed that year. Were approved by voters. It was a fairly narrow margin, about 3,000 votes, if I remember right, that it passed by. The legislature didn't care for it, so in 2020 they passed Senate Bill 200, which largely made the independent redistricting committee advisory only. They could make recommendations, but it wasn't binding, and sort of exempted their own process from the neutral criteria. Passed the map that they passed, which split Salt Lake County into 4 districts. The League of Women Voters and Mormon Women for Ethical Government sued over that, along with some residents who lived in the Mill Creek area where the split kind of came together. And they sued over that and said basically that undoing a citizen initiative nullifies the constitutional right to the initiative process. In 2022 was when the lawsuit was filed. In 2024, the Utah Supreme Court agreed with that interpretation, said the legislature can't arbitrarily pass or can't arbitrarily repeal a ballot initiative that alters and reforms government. Sent it back down to the lower court in 2025. Judge Diana Gibson, who was hearing the case, said Proposition 4 is the law. She said that the boundaries that had been passed by the legislature in 2021 were no longer complied with the law, and so they had to be redrawn. Sent it back to the legislature. The legislature did adopted some maps or took some proposals for maps, chose one that they submitted to the court. The legislature also agreed during that process that the plaintiffs would be able to submit a map, which they did. They submitted 2 maps, actually. So the legislature sends its map to Diana Gibson. Judge Gibson says, well, this still doesn't comply with Proposition 4, so we can't use this. So she has to then at that point pick one of the 2 maps from the plaintiffs, and she picked this map that created this Salt Lake County district that is Democratic leaning. The legislature's been suing over, or been appealing that a few times. They appealed it to the state Supreme Court, which rejected the appeal last Friday. And Representative Burgess Owens and Celeste Malloy filed an appeal to the federal court, which was also rejected yesterday. So that means, as of now, barring any unforeseen intervention from the U.S. Supreme Court or whatever, that map that Judge Gibson proposed is going to be the map for the 2026 election.
So now this Republican-backed group, Utahns for Representative Government, since I think November, have been collecting signatures to essentially do the exact same thing Better Boundaries did in 2018, and that's in reverse, though. It's creating a ballot initiative that hopefully voters will then say, hey, JK, we didn't really mean it in 2018. We really don't want Proposition 4. Yeah. And that vote, as of now, would be in the fall during the midterms if the Proposition 4 repeal is successful. So where are we at now? About 120,000 of 141 signatures?
Yeah. So the thinking is if the legislature can't repeal an initiative, well, that initiative can repeal an initiative. And so they've got about 129,000 signatures right now. They need about 141,000. So they need roughly 11,000 more signatures at this point. They submitted those signatures on February 15th. They said at the time that they submitted well over 200,000. So they think they're confident that they're going to qualify for the ballot. But as it stands right now, it's kind of a little up in the air, because not only do they need 140,000 signatures statewide, they also need to get 8% of the registered voters in 26 of the 29 Senate districts. And this is kind of an interesting side note, I guess. The legislature's made the initiative process really hard because the Republican legislature doesn't like the initiative process. Stuart Adams says, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. The voice of the people needs to be the legislature and not the ballot initiative process. So they've made it really hard to get on. 26 of 29 Senate districts, getting those 8% is challenging. And if Jeff, if you want to share, let's see, I can share it. Actually, there's a map that we've created that shows the status of the current signature gathering statewide. And I just put that in the chat, I believe.
I think I tried to put it in like a link to where you can see your signatures too. Like if you signed or not, you should be able to see if your signature has been validated, or if you've got concerns. I did just put that link in the chat.
Okay. All right. Yeah, there is the lieutenant governor posts updates on every weekday at 9 a.m. that says, here's the updated list of people who signed the petition. So there have been some people who have asked the question, okay, well, how do I know if my name's on the list? So you can go to that link and search for your name, Command F and find your name and see if you're there. If you are there and you want to be there, then great. Nothing to see. If you are on there and didn't sign it or don't want to be on it, then you can contact your county clerk. There's a form you have to fill out. It's got to be the paper form and submit it to the county clerk if you want to remove your signature.
Yeah, it looks like the signature, the links aren't showing up, are they? Let me. Okay. We'll get those sent to you. 1 second.
We might be also be able to share screen.
That's okay.
Okay. We don't want to get in over our heads.
So the other question in the comments for the story that we had on yesterday about this was, so this is all about the congressional maps. What about state legislative maps? Like those aren't the only electoral boundaries here in the state. Why has there been a lawsuit and why not?
So that's an interesting question. Yeah, the lawsuit that was brought by League of Women Voters and Mormon Women for Ethical Government only dealt with the congressional boundaries. The legislature also drew state Senate, state House, and school board, state school board boundaries. Those weren't challenged. And so the rulings that we've had out of the Supreme Court and out of the federal court only applies to the 4 seats on the congressional maps right now. There was some discussion about why didn't they also challenge the other maps, and there just hasn't been that lawsuit brought. It seems like, given the precedent that's been set by the Supreme Court and by the other courts, that it would be a pretty straightforward lawsuit, but it hasn't been done.
Will it happen?
Well, that's not up to me. It seems like, it won't happen before the 2026 election, obviously. The maps are set and filing periods had already opened for the legislative districts. And so there's not going to be any changes by the 2026 election. If this Proposition 4 repeal effort goes through, if it makes it onto the November ballot, and voters decide that, yes, we do want to repeal Proposition 4, then you can anticipate that the legislature would probably redraw the congressional boundaries for the 2028 race. And also that would kind of eliminate any case to be made that the state legislative and the school board boundaries were improper as well.
But not for this fall.
Correct. Not for this fall.
Yep. So we've added a couple links now. We are figuring out the technology. Thank you for Kyle, who is one of our editors here. He's helping us with the tech a little bit. So you'll see those links. The first link you can see in there is a long running daily updated list of how many total signatures the Lieutenant Governor's office has validated. So those are coming up through the county clerk's office, all 29 counties, into the Lieutenant Governor's office. And then they're posting those names. If you Control F, like you would in any, like other window on the internet or like in a Google Doc, and type in your name, you'll be able to see if your name's there or not. I'll say that I've been checking my name pretty regularly. I as a journalist, can't sign. I don't sign, stuff like this just out of ethics, journalism ethics. And so I just want to make sure my name doesn't show up on that. But of course, we've had a little bit of fun looking to see what politicians haven't signed the initiative.
Well, and there's this there have been these back and forth throughout about one side saying that the signature gatherers were using deceptive tactics and they got tricked into signing it and then want their name rescinded. There was a situation in Utah County where the clerk identified about 27 signature packets that had a very high rejection rate on the signatures, which led him to believe that they might be fraudulent. Some of those have been turned over to the county attorney for investigation. And the group that had been behind the signature gathering movement said that they terminated those signature gatherers that were suspected of submitting fraudulent signatures. And then on the other side, obviously, the group trying to push for the repeal has said that there have been intimidation and violent tactics used by the opposition. They've been going around and following the signature gatherers and trying to convince people not to sign the petition. So it got pretty testy there down the stretch. We're in a stage now where during the validation process, there's not a whole lot that can be done to influence it one way or the other, but we have seen better boundaries in another group called Brave Utahns Rapid Response Network that's been reaching out to people who signed, because this list that we posted in the chat, that's public, so we know who signed, and they're reaching out to all of those people who signed and saying, hey, if you didn't mean to sign, if you regret signing, here's how to remove your signature. And then today, or yesterday actually, Utahns for Representative Government, the Republican-backed group that's behind the repeal effort, filed a lawsuit saying that we just posted this story on this. Actually, they filed a lawsuit that said that the signature removal effort that Better Boundaries is running is illegal because it's sending people pre-stamped envelopes, and that 73-cent stamp is they consider an incentive to convince people to remove their signature, which is prohibited under Utah law. So there's even though all the signatures are submitted, the gamesmanship isn't over yet, and we aren't probably going to know for a number of weeks whether this actually gets on the ballot or not.
By state law, Lieutenant Governor Deirdre Henderson, who is the state's top elections official, has until April 29th to make a decision.
Correct. It shouldn't take that long, frankly. No. As we look at it right now, and you can look at the map I posted in there, if that got posted. Let's see. Yeah, it got posted. You can see that they were really strong in southern Utah, obviously, well over the marks that they needed in those Senate districts in southern Utah. They've locked up a few in northern Utah now in the last couple of days, but it's that section along the Wasatch Front, Weber, Davis, and Salt Lake County it's where it's going to be made, or it's going to make or break them. Because they can only miss in 4 districts, there are 3 in Salt Lake County that they're probably not going to make it in, and that's 14, 15, and I want to say 9, which is partly Salt Lake County, partly Davis County. Those are the ones that they're furthest behind in. And so that puts a lot of pressure on, I believe it's 7 and 8 and 15 in Salt Lake County that are still, they're about 75% through. The hard part now, though, is I talked to the Davis County clerk this morning before we came on. He said that they've got about 150 signature packets left. We don't know how many signatures are in each of those packets until they get, verified. But they had 450 as of the deadline on February 15th. So they're about 2/3 of the way through it. And I just would suggest people to look at Senate District 7. That seems to be sort of the bellwether, the one that's going to determine whether they get to 26 or not. It so happens that Senate President Stuart Adams' district, right now they're sitting at about 75%. Since the February 15th submission, when they've gone through 2/3 of those, they've added about 1,700. So you can anticipate they'd add about another 900 maybe in the final third. That would not get them there. They need about 1,100 signatures to get there. And so it's going to be tight whether they get the 26 districts. And then once they get them again, there's that whole signature removal period that we've got to wait and see that play out. There's 45 days after the signature appears on this list that we shared for people to remove their signatures. And with that concerted push, about 3,400 people so far have filed the forms to remove their signatures. And that number is growing by a few hundred a day, frankly.
With the last day being for anyone to sign, and then for those packets to get turned in being the 15th, we're looking at like April Fool's being like the very last day for signatures to come off. And then there's that month of, bureaucracy kind of figuring out.
I hadn't done the math, but that is about right. That first week of April will be the deadline for signatures to come off. Look, if they don't get to the threshold in Senate District 7 and 8, then it's kind of a done deal, right?
Yep.
If they do get to the threshold and it's just by a little bit, then that's when the signature removal becomes something that we'll be watching closely.
If you guys have more questions, please put those in the chat here. One of the things that was really interesting, and we've talked about this a couple of times just between us, and with some Republican strategists on when do you submit all these packets. For the longest time, if you were watching this, you'd see that this Republican backed group, Utahns for Representative Government, did not have the signatures. So they were so far off, it looked like. But in the last week, they really kind of piled in the signatures, and there's some strategy there.
Well, I think a lot of people were dismissing or saying this was dead already. I was not one of those people, because obviously they're going to withhold the signatures as long as they can. We saw there was a labor referendum, a referendum to try to repeal a law targeting labor unions. And they only had 30 days, and they gathered over 300,000 signatures, but dumped almost all of them at the very end. The reasoning for doing that is because that makes it harder for the people trying to get the removal. They've got so many more they've got to deal with. They don't get a head start in getting the removal, and so you're kind of making their job a little bit harder. So obviously we knew that they were going to be holding back as many signatures as they could. The only condition in the law was that they have to submit the petition packets within 30 days of the first signer. So they could have. So those that they dumped on the 15th were people that signed back in January 15th, roughly January 16th, 17th in some cases. So it was a big flood of signatures. They if we take them at their word that they have over 200,000, and it does look like they're going to get well over the 140,000 that they need statewide, that's kind of a standard way to do this. It wasn't too surprising to most people, but the number was. I was at the Salt Lake County clerk's office on Sunday, the 15th. The clerk's office is all opened on Sunday, and it became pretty obvious when they wheeled in a dolly with those big black totes, plastic totes full of signature packets, that they were going to get to where they needed to be. But like I said, the Salt Lake County clerk thinks that she's going to be done with the counting in the county either Friday or possibly Monday, with some cleanup on Monday, but mostly done on Friday. So the numbers we're seeing now are getting close to the final numbers.
We're seeing rate increases every day that, if that holds, will certainly put them over 141 by Friday.
Right. I would expect. Yeah. It's been about 6,000 to 7,000 signatures have been added to the list a day. And so that would put them over the 141,000 by Thursday morning, most likely, barring some unforeseen drop off in the number that are being reported. What else you got? Any questions? Have I bored you?
I'm not bored.
Okay.
I think we're just starting too. If this does pass, if they do get 26 of 29 counties, the messaging effort starts again anew, because then they've got from May to the first week in November to convince people to either support or not support.
Well, and that's
this repeal.
That's a good point, because the polling that's been done on this, and there are two main polls that we've seen done on this. One of them was done by Better Boundaries, so you can take it with a grain of salt, but it says about 2/3 of voters want an independent commission, don't want Prop 4 repealed. The other one was done by the Sutherland Institute. It's a conservative think tank. And what they found was that there was 85% of voters want an independent commission involved in the redistricting process. Only 15% want the legislature unilateral authority to do this. And so what that tells you is, even if this gets on the ballot, it's not a done deal that it's going to be repealed. I've heard some suggest that it may actually backfire on the Republicans, because what we saw in 2018 was this big spike in voter turnout when we had those initiatives on the ballot. If this drives voter turnout of people who are opposed to the repeal of Proposition 4, the supporters of keeping the independent redistricting commission in place, then that could have some impacts on some of the close elections down the ballot. Especially in a midterm election, turnout's not usually very high. We don't have a gubernatorial race. We don't have a presidential race. Turnout's otherwise going to be pretty low, and so something like that bumps turnout up 10%. In 2018, when those initiatives were on the ballot, that was the year Ben McAdams won that Republican leading district, in large part, I would say entirely, because of the voter turnout that was driven mainly by the medical marijuana initiative.
Will be an interesting midterm this year, especially as we know now that these new maps will hold, that there'll certainly be what looks like a very friendly Democratic congressional district here.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's some on the Republican side in particular say that this is a district that Kamala Harris won by 24%, which is true. But it's also a district that Brian King got 50.7% of the vote
Yeah.
in. So it's not like this is a
Yep.
slam dunk. It's not as Democratic friendly as some are making it out to be. Now it is. It does definitely lean to the Democrats. Depending on how you calculate the numbers, it's between 12 and 17 percentage point Democratic advantage there. And because of that, because it's the first time we've had a district that leans Democratic in a state congressional election in decades, we've seen a lot of people filing. I mean, we've got, you're going to have to help me remember all of the names, but we've got Ben McAdams, we've got Kathleen Reeby. They were the first two to jump in. Nate Bluin, State Senator Nate Bluin, former State Senator Derek Kitchen. We've got Liban Mohammed, Luis Villarreal, and the Salt Lake City Councilwoman Ava Lopez Chavez. All of those people have filed on the Democratic side. We've got a couple candidates who filed on the Republican side. Dave Robinson is one of them, and I am blanking on the other person's name right now. His last name is Udell, I believe. And so, yeah, this is a crowded field on the Democratic side. The primary is going to be really important. The convention is going to be important. Ben McAdams right now is the only candidate who has turned in the 7,000 signatures he needs to be automatically on the primary ballot. So that convention is going to matter to a lot of these other candidates. One of the interesting things I heard actually was I was talking to Derek Kitchen and asked him how his signature gathering was going. And he said it's really been challenging because everybody that his signature gatherers approach to sign the petition think that they're signing for the Prop 4 repeal and they don't want to do it. And so it's been a little bit harder. People are a little bit wary of signing a petition that they may not fully understand.
Yeah. I'll say just anecdotally, I saw more Ben gatherers than I saw Prop 4 repeal gatherers in the last month.
Well, yeah, that's partly because he spent a lot of money on it, and also he was flooding Salt Lake County, right? So it was a higher concentration of signature gatherers for his campaign in Salt Lake County, but yeah, they got those pretty quickly, and I think there will probably be a few other candidates who do end up turning them in at the end of the day. The filing deadline, the legislature moved the filing deadlines for the congressional race back to the first week of March 9th, I believe is when it opens, because they wanted a little bit more time for these appeals to run their course. And then they kind of waited a month to file their appeal, which is one of the reasons that it didn't get heard. But so these candidates have been gathering signatures, but don't officially file until that March 9th to, I believe, the 13th.
Conventions for both parties are Saturday, the April 25th, I think.
I'm glad you remember that.
And that'll be a busy work day for us.
And I think the party caucuses are the second week of March sometime.
Coming up here soon.
Where they'll choose the delegates that will go to the nominating convention and decide which, if any, of the candidates come out automatically.
So Ben, anyone else that collects enough signatures, plus whoever wins that convention vote on the 25th, will then go to the June 23rd, I think, primary here in Utah, which I said on Hinckley a couple weeks ago. I'm really interested in. It'll be super interesting to see who pulls out that primary for that.
Yeah, I mean, we rarely have competitive Democratic primaries in this state, and so it is going to be an unusual occurrence. And then the other thing that I'm kind of watching is you've got 4 Republican members of Congress right now in the 4 Republican districts, and you've only got 3 safe Republican districts. So how's that going to work? Is Burgess Owens going to run against Celeste Malloy or Michael Kennedy, or is he going to retire and let those 3 kind of, keep the seats that they've got? And then, Celeste Malloy barely won her Republican primary 2 years ago. And so that's not a given that she's going to prevail there again, too. So there's some action on the Republican side as well.
Yeah. I don't see any more questions from y'all. We really appreciate you calling in and hanging out with us for a little bit over your lunch period. And I'll just give you another couple seconds to type something if you got a question. Gehrke, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in summary, the high points are, by Thursday, we anticipate that they'll get the statewide number, and then we'll watch through probably the middle or end of the following week while they finish up those districts, particularly, like I said, District 7 and 8 in Davis County, and maybe 15 in Salt Lake County. And then we find out if they got the threshold, if they do, what's the margins, and then we start watching the repeal efforts. You can count on, if you are a voter in those districts who signed the petition, that you're going to be contacted repeatedly, probably, to try to get a removal. And then the Republican side, they're going to be running an effort to say, don't withdraw your signature, keep your signature, keep your voice, I think is the campaign they're using. And so there's still some chapters to be written, but I think we're nearing a culmination.
Yeah. Thank you, Robert.
Yeah. Thank you.
And thank you all. It's really appreciate you showing up, and we'll be in touch. See ya.